Hey folks, it's Ardwulf and welcome to Traveler Tuesday. We are taking a look today at a relatively new product from Mongoose Publishing. This is the Spinward Extents. So apparently, based on the conversation in the recent Mayday convention, this is a product that was kind of sold to Mongoose blind. They were just sent in this submission by Geir Landeskog, who is the author, and it turned out really well, we think. So it is a 370-page book. I believe the hardcover is still not yet available, but you can pre-order the hardcover, and if you buy anything from Mongoose directly, you get the PDF for free. So we'll be looking at the PDF today, and maybe we'll take another look at the hardcover whenever that shows up. So the credits look like Mark Miller, Classic Traveler, Mongoose Traveler Geir Landeskog, whose name I am doubtless pronouncing badly. And then we have a table of contents here. I don't think much of the way that Mongoose has been doing tables of contents. The current edition of Mongoose Traveler, I think, has gone a long way toward updating the game graphically to a modern standard. Although I liked the game, the Mongoose Traveler First Edition was graphically fairly poor consistently throughout the life of the line. In this case, I have what I consider, not an incredibly serious complaint, but I wish they'd have done a better job with the table of contents. We'll see if there's it says there's an index in the back. So what we have here are two sectors, the Beyond and the Vanguard Reaches. Now, these are both sectors that had been done by third-party groups back in the Classic Traveler day. And while I think some of that material was leveraged here, I'm not sure that it's basically a revision of those two sectors. So here, just to contextualize this a little bit, is the map of the official Traveler universe on travelermap.com, which is a resource that if you're into Traveler, you should really be looking at, and which can really be used as like a live play. At some point I'll do a video on this, but it's an amazing resource. The Beyond is right here, and the Vanguard Reaches are right here. The Traveler map data has been updated to reflect the new book instead of the old third-party product. So up here you can see the Spinward Marches, which is, kind of the classic setting for Traveler, and the Deneb sector, which is a sector which is in the current book Behind the Claw, which does both Spinward Marches and the Deneb sector. So this thing where Mongoose is going to do 2 sectors per book, I think is really cool. They're also going to do additional sectors in the sort of Empire books, the only one of which that is out is the Third Imperium, which gives us core sector. It would be really great to have a full treatment of those sectors that have never really been handled in a thorough way, like Daibei, for example, Delphi, for example, the Fornast, and Antares. This whole sort of forward trailing area up here by the Julian Protectorate or Confederation or whatever it is, has never really been dealt with in detail at all. So anyway, but back to the Spinward Extents, which does the Beyond and the Vanguard Reaches. So we'll be taking a look at this. So we have an introduction, a one-page introduction, which talks about bases in the Spinward Extents. If I call it the Spinward Marches, which I probably will, it's the Spinward Extents, which are these 2 sectors instead. And of course, the Trojan Reach, which is adjacent to the Beyond, has also gotten a great deal of detail in the Mongoose Traveler era. It is the setting of Pirates of Drenax, which is probably one of the best prepared, commercial campaigns for any RPG ever. My opinion of it is just absolutely off the charts. It does require we'll do a video on this at some point. It requires a fair amount of work to make it work at its finest, but it's nevertheless amazing. So back to this book. So the Beyond, the pre-Aslan era, it looks like we're getting a little bit of timeline up front. The Settlement era. Here's the actual timeline. So this goes all the way from the Age of the Ancients, and the Malgnar. So I want to say that the Malgnar were a race or people or whatever, were around before. I believe that to be an accurate statement. And this 2-page timeline goes all the way up to the current year 1105, which is kind of like the Mongoose Classic Golden Age, which I think is a really good sweet spot for Traveler to be at, by the way. I should do a video on that too. Anyway, governments of the Beyond. We have the Principality of Barukar. It's a principality without a prince. The 12-year-old 1,200-year-old polity has officially been ruled by Prince Rashid II for more than 200 years, but he is in suspended animation since he suffered a brain aneurysm on his 42nd birthday at 894. That's very interesting. The Corellian League, the name should sound somewhat familiar, but it's a bit, it's not the same. We have looks like we got more Corellian League, full members of the Corellian League. So we got a lot of detail about them, and looks like they're a pretty big polity here. And then, so I think there's a sort of typesetting issue here that I'm going to call out, where you've got kind of like a sort of a section title, Governments of the Beyond, and you have subsection titles below that, Principality of Brukar, the Corellian League. And then when we get to this Akruk's heavy cruiser, it goes back to like the primary section header. And this is a Corellian vessel here that we're getting information on. And the rest of the vessels are like that too. So there's a bit of I think a typesetting. I won't call it snafu because I have no reason to think it was not intentional. But I think, maybe not optimal typesetting. That is a minor complaint in the grand scheme of things, but it does kind of impede my ability to parse this thing quickly in the context of going through the book with you. So we've got some deck plans. These are the new top-down deck plans, which are basically preferred by everybody that actually runs this game. They're just a lot easier to deal with. We've got a bunch of additional ships here, which we're not going to go through the details of. The Hefrin colony. Looks like this is another government. There's the Isred Protectorate, and it tells us where the subsectors are too, which is rather nice. There's a lot of nice things that I like in this book. I've glanced through it already, but not really read it cover to cover, because, it is 370 pages. Here's some pronunciation guides for alien languages, which sounds like it would be amusing to try to do in game. Sredni trade goods. That's how I'm going to pronounce it until I'm instructed differently by that note. We've got some ships, 800-ton ships. Interesting looking ships at that. The imagery surrounding the Traveler ships has always been not exactly a strength of Traveler graphics. There are certain ships that have become iconic, the Free Trader and the Far Trader specifically, and probably the Suleiman class Scout Courier as well. But beyond that, a lot of the ships have kind of failed to become iconic, I think. That said, I guess those three ships kind of make up for it, but those are three quite small ships. The Monarchy of Lod, or Lod, or I don't know. I'm going to call it Lod for now, anyway. So that's interesting. Dragon Destroyer, Heavy Scout, 5,000 tons. That's a very heavy scout. TL, what's a TL on this thing? TL11. Now, I do kind of like although it's a little space hungry, I do kind of like the stat block format for ships that Mongoose Traveler 2nd Edition has done. Pretty interesting looking, sort of Klingon/Romulan-esque looking ship. The Duchy of Maypire. Again, dubious pronunciation on that. Maypire Interceptor, which is Interceptor is, it's a 200-ton ship. That's a pretty big ship. So, and it's got sort of TIE Fighter-esque wings and is otherwise a large tube. So, the Nacris Confederation. This is a lot of really nice detail on the governments of the Beyond subsector or sector. So, the Stormhaven Republic, the Zydarian Codominium, organizations of the Beyond. This is interesting. The Gateway Consortium. So, registered with the Corellian League as an operator of commercial starports and starships. So there is a gateway sector in Traveler, and there is also an adventure called Gateway, and I'm not sure that the adventure takes place in Gateway. And in addition to that, the three recent mercenary adventures that were just released with a Kickstarter, check out that video from last week, are also taking place in the Gateway sector. So this term gateway, well, there's a precedence in sci-fi literature for that term too, right? From the Fred Paul novels and such. It gets used just a little too much, but then again, that is a thing you see in the real world too. So maybe that's just something we have to suck up. Kraken Heavy Industries, Chalukine Consortium, Web Edge Consortium. The Storm Knights have fought to hold back the tide of Aslan expansion for more than 1,700 years. This is very interesting. Now, I will point out that I have glanced at the old third-party books on Beyond and Vanguard Reaches, but that's it. I have not read them, at least within memory. I haven't read them. The Order of Thunder. So these are part of the three orders of knighthood in the Storm Knights. Looks like they're, this is interesting. This is very interesting, actually. Aslan Expeditions. Very interesting. Looks like this is a kind of got a lot of built-in plot hook type of stuff right here. Storm Knight ranks, Storm Knight careers. Looks like we have careers for these guys too. Here's the Order of Thunder, the Order of the Inconstant Star, and the Order of Shadows. That's interesting. Although, we don't get a lot of like custom careers for a lot of groups in Classic Traveler. So I would, or Mongoose Traveler for that matter. So I would regard this kind of thing as very optional, even if you're choosing to use these Storm Knights in your campaign. Knight Commanders. Looks like we're getting a lot of stuff on this. They've got their own ships. Trying to scroll down smoothly here. Starfighter starships. This is a 100-ton ship. Interesting. Scimitar class frigate, which is 2,400 tons, that's a big ship, right? This is total cost. Where's the total cost? I'm not seeing a total cost. It's got to be here. Purchase cost, 1.7 billion credits. So, billion with a B. Saber class pinnace at 40. This is obviously the frigate, not the Saber, the 40-ton Saber class pinnace. But again, I'm happy to see them go to the 2D deck plans because they're just better. They're a lot easier to deal with in game. And after all, that is the point, right? They're not just there to look pretty. They're there for you to use. Aliens of the Beyond. So we have a bunch of different species. The majority of sentients in the Beyond are Aslan, who count for 107 of the 175 billion inhabitants, are the majority race in 58 inhabited systems. It's always interesting to see statistics like that. Humanity is the most widespread race with 53 billion inhabitants, the majority in 233 systems, including 7 billion members of the Floriani living on 8 worlds. So the Floriani state is kind of overlaps into this sector as well. So the Aniyun, the beetle-like methane-breathing race native to Quatanon in the Corella subsector. Very interesting. Members of the Corellan League. Okay. I'm absolutely going to continue calling it Corellian until I actually have to do this for a campaign and can make that correction. The Wormer, centipede-like hive race native to the interdicted world of Dickenwep within a system controlled by the Principality of Brukar. Okay, basic technological civilization, but early attempts by the Corellan League and the Principality to make meaningful contact ended in violence and proved fruitless. Okay, so they're pretty bug-like. The Gmina are a primitive, tailless, scorpion-like race. I sense that the author likes arthropods, confined to reservations on their native world of Yangakent. Yangakent. I'm not sure how you're supposed to pronounce that, but we'll go with that for now. Rules for creating Gmina travelers. Do we have rules? Yep. Aniyun travelers, yes. The Wormer don't get that subsection because they are a hive mind, presumably. The Chemli, race with a complex life cycle. Native to Chemlos, a large moon of a gas giant in orbit around a red dwarf star, the Chemli have been full members of the Corellan League for most of its existence. Okay, the Katiao, we'll call it, a reconstructed race. Intelligence is dependent on a symbiosis with a fungoid called Kati, which is intertwined with their central nervous system. This looks interesting. This looks very interesting. We do have Chemli Traveler creation rules, and these folks as well, who are these guys, I guess. So a whole bunch of interesting looking aliens in here. And here's the Malgnar, who are a human minor race transplanted by the ancients 300,000 years ago. They're a dominant race in the low-tech caste-based society, encompassing both Malgnar and Chirper, Sophonts on a small cold world beyond the borders of the Imperium. Okay, that's very interesting. So we'll take a look at these guys. And of course, you could create characters. Since they're just different kind of humans, you can just... the flying humans. Interesting. These guys can't fly, though. And then there's the Sredni, fur-covered, spider-like octopoids with a cohesive, possibly hive-like society and advanced biotechnology. That's very interesting. Okay. Just all kind of cool stuff here. This is a very, very richly developed subsector sector with its own, a lot of its own stuff going on. A lot of minor races are in here to work with. And then we're going to get into, the Tekea Traveler section, you can make those characters as well. Now we're going to get into the treatments of the subsectors. We're going to buzz through this very quickly, since we are already 17 minutes in to this 370-page book. So we get, subsector maps on the facing pages. So I would be cooler if these were on facing pages. Maybe they are in the physical book. That's a good point. They might not be in the ebook. So in any case, the way that Mongoose is typically doing this is you get the subsector, you get all the subsector data, you get a map of the subsector, and then somewhere between 2 and 4 individual systems will get a little zoom in, which is an interesting balance that some people don't like. Some people would prefer, to see detail on every single world. Other people, including myself, would prefer to allow the game master the latitude to interpret the UWPs, these codes. We've done some videos on that, so check those out if you're interested in exploring that idea. In interpreting those codes to suit their own campaign and creative urges. And I think that's part of the magic of Traveler, and I think that I really like having the latitude to come up with that stuff on my own. So for me, this hits a bit of a sweet spot. You get some detail on some of the systems, but you're not like overloaded with detail on every single system in every single subsector. Relatively few Traveler books have tried to do that. One of the only ones I can think of is Behind the Claw for GURPS Traveler, which is a good book in a lot of ways, but it actually details, it gives you a paragraph or two on every single world in the Spinward Marches. And it does mean that you're kind of beholden to the canonicity of that, right? I mean, you're either going to use it or you're not. If you're not going to use it, it's not of use. And if you are going to use it, then you kind of have a whole lot to keep in your head and lose the ability to kind of say, okay, this is how I want to interpret the UWP in this case. So it looks like for the Maypire subsector, we get details on 4 worlds. Liberty Hall subsector. We got 3 worlds here. Katanga. Looks like we got 3 worlds here. Natives of Katanga are fully human, so we have looks like they are some kind of divergent human group. We got another one here. Marrakesh. Corella. We do get Corella, the capital of the Corellan League. Plus a bunch of other ones. Freya. Get some critters in here, too. Bran's Cage, a barren world in orbit around a red dwarf. That's cool. Interdicted since the 9th expedition more than 1,000 years ago. This is a red zone. Who's interdicting it is I guess my question. That's something that we'll have to pick out of reading the whole text. Here is a subsector that we are not going to try to pronounce. The Florian subsector, and we're going to see, I think that this is the part of the Florian League. I believe that's the name of their nation. And they're a minor human race that's present in the Trojan Reach. Extends into the beyond as well. Get some detail here. Atlantis is a water world with almost no land mass. Most of its crust is beneath 6 to 10 kilometers of water. Only a single subcontinental shelf approaches sea level. That's cool. Nacris. Okay, here's Gateway. the world of Gateway. So we have a planet called Gateway, which, the same thing that I said before about this. We have Gateway Highport, which is a 150,000 ton starport. We have seen rules for generating starports in the past. You could certainly use the starship creation rules for that if you wanted to. So more worlds here. The Storm subsector. Delta Cephi. Yeah, we'll go with that. Named after the famed prototype Cepheid variable star. Xenogast biological contaminant. Very interesting. Okay. All right. So we got a lot of stuff here. Spinward Drift, the Spinward Drift subsector. Ghost Rift, which has a big empty place in it. Siren. Here's another Highport. 60,000 ton Highport. That to me is very much screams Elite Dangerous orbital base, actually. Aslani subsector. Looks like this is an Aslan subsector, so that's kind of expected. Oh, we've got some Aslan ships. I suppose I'd kind of like to see like just a ship's book or a series of ship's books that say, hey, here's a book of just Imperial ships. Here's a book of just Aslan ships. Which could be, certainly there's a lot of ships floating around. This is one of the things that I would say is kind of a traditional Traveler issue. That Mongoose hasn't really done much to fix is the scattering of information across a variety of different supplements. You want ships? Well, they're all over the place. You want creatures? Well, they're all over the place. You want alien races? Well, they're all over the place. And that's kind of a pain. I think there is need of some kind of master index of this material for each edition. So here's the Vanguard Reaches. This is the second sector in this book. And it looks like it starts out fairly similarly with a big timeline. Except that the textual history of it is a bit shorter, quite a bit shorter, actually. All right, so governments of the Vanguard Reaches, the Altarian Confederation. Murian Pulse Laser Bay. This is a different type of technology for a different type of laser bay. Here's some ships. Here is, boy, that looks a lot like a mercenary cruiser, except it's 5,000 tons. I mean, the general globe ship type is not like that's limited to the mercenary cruiser. Okay. How big is this Altaran state, I wonder? The Esliat Magistracy. I don't know how to pronounce that. Magistracy? Okay. They're a minor race. We'll get to them. The Jarnak Pashalik. Interesting. Jarnak and 5 nearby systems. The Kajani Triumvirate. Splinter State of the Corellan League. The Hyperion League. The Talarian Cluster. Here's the Talarian Main. Which is, so a main is sort of a contiguous string of systems, all of which are jump one from the rest of the main. So you can reach any world in the main with a jump one ship. The Trellin Domain. Here's a ship. There's the Apollo battle cruiser. How big is this? 80,000 tons. That's a huge ship. This is 46 billion credits. The Jodani Consulate Colonnade Province. So this is like sort of an exclave of the Jodani Consulate that reaches into the Vanguard Reaches. And I don't really know how that happened or how that worked. And hopefully that is developed in here. Organizations of the Vanguard Reaches, the Allerton Corporation. The Eli are the plague of the Tellurian cluster. What are they? Sounds like they're pirates. Institute for Geophysical Studies. Interesting. Okay. Here's some IGS ships. This kind of thing always makes me wonder, hey, where does the funding come from? right? They've got this 1,000-ton ship that cost, 500 million credits. Who paid for it? And maybe that's answered in here, and I didn't see it, but that is a question that I always ask. Oh, the giant stars of the Vanguard Reach is home to 9 giant stars. Very interesting. 4 of those 8 giants are circled by words at least marginally habitable. That's interesting. That is probably not entirely in line with how current astrophysics thinks that works, but I'm not going to look too closely at that. Traveler has never done anything except sort of try to provide the feel of hard sci-fi. It is not and has never been a hard sci-fi system or setting, but it has often tried to evoke the feel of hard sci-fi. So here we have aliens in the Vanguard Reaches. The Atrafari, they're flying multi-limbed omnivores. Looks like those guys. Interesting looking folks. Here's the Esliot. Did we do those in the last sector? Maybe not, but you could create characters. So the Frenny. No, I don't remember them before. There's these bug-looking guys. Okay. The Ganani are a minor human race. The Murians, starfaring race native to the world known as Arcturus. So that's not the star Arcturus. That's just some planet named Arcturus. For clarity about that. And the planet does not orbit the star. Resavolk. Okay. Are these guys, I believe. The Thonani, or the Thonane. Looks like you can make these characters. So these guys are like manta ray folks. That's kind of neat. Here's some ooze people. You always want some ooze people. It's always nice to have like super duper alien aliens, right? There's plenty of not particularly alien aliens in the Traveler universe, but there's reasons why they're there too. They're not just, hey, here's the cat people, here's the dog people, blah, 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 blah. They're there because the ancients put them there, pretty much. That's not technically true about the Aslan, but there is reason to think that the Aslan were manipulated in the past by the ancients, even if they were not transplanted or uplifted like the Vargar were. So we have a couple of planets here, and again, I think we're having a bit of trouble with the headers here. So you've got these Thonane folks, and then you've got what look like 2 planets. No, these are species. Okay. But okay. So I guess that's not really the problem I said it was. And then we get right in. It feels like there was less original, like, descriptive material here before we get right into the subsectors. So once again, subsectors, we get some basic information. We get a map. We get the UWPs of all this stuff, which includes the allegiances. So, this stuff is these systems are mostly part of the Jodani Colonnade province. And we get some detail on specific systems, which is pretty cool. Don't know how to pronounce these. So for those who wonder about, hey, all these weird, crazy names that look like they were randomly generated off a table at some point, were in fact randomly generated off a table at some point. So if the words look like the maybe they weren't designed to be pronounced, that's because they came off a table somewhere. And you see that a lot with like Jodani words and Villani words. So more subsector material. And again, I can't go through all of this. The Diadem subsector. But we're getting a lot here. We're getting so Diadem, for instance, we get, 3 big paragraphs. We get the UWPs. We get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 systems are detailed in here. 6 systems are detailed in here. With quite a bit of information, actually. Hyperion subsector. Esliot. Kynard. Yavaker B. As somebody that would, if you were running a campaign out here, you're going to want to kind of go through the names that are likely to come up in your campaign and figure out how you are going to pronounce them. It's not particularly, I don't think it's particularly necessary or important in any way to try to remain canonical with that kind of thing, but it's good to be consistent inside your campaign. That aids in verisimilitude. The Harmony subsector, Kajani subsector, Helix subsector. So there's a nebula in here. That's interesting. Helix Planetary Nebula, recently dead star. Very interesting. Looks like we got some details on that too. Helix Nebula Expedition. 900 years later by the Great Rift Expedition. Very interesting. Altarian subsector. Okay. Old Colonies subsector. Low-tech spacecraft. Very interesting. Very interesting. So this looks like some rules for generating low-tech spacecraft at TL6 and 7 and 8 and stuff. That's well, at least at 7 and 8. Interesting. So primitive hulls are available at TL5, but at this TL costs double and cannot exceed thrust 1. So if they can't exceed thrust 1, then they can't exceed they can't get to orbit of, say, an Earth-sized planet anyway. If you had a low-mass planet, you could, but I'm not doing the calculation on the fly here. It's not that hard to calculate that. The Jarnak subsector, it's interesting to see that. Again, I'd have preferred to see that in sort of a Universal Ships Manual or something like that. Hey, maybe they'll pop up in the new High Guard. They're redoing High Guard for the 2022 update. The Gigaraptor, Flying Hexapodal Ambush Predator. That's pretty cool. The Type E Fighter, 10 tons. Very boxy. Looks bigger than 10 tons, too, I gotta say. So we got some ships back here, including a couple of big ones. Okay, rumors and legends. Always nice to see this kind of thing, actually. And then here's an index. I have in the past criticized indexes that look like they were generated by Microsoft Word. This does not look better than that. So not super duper impressed with the index, particularly in a book that also doesn't have much of a table of contents either. However, one thing I will say is that it's fully bookmarked, but the bookmarks are not done hierarchically or in order. And it doesn't actually look like it's fully bookmarked either. This actually looks like a pretty slapdash job of bookmarking, I gotta say. So finding material in this book until you get used to it is probably going to be a bit of an issue. However, all other things being equal, I am really happy that we had the chance to go through this book today. I am very happy to see these two specific Spinward area sectors. Why do I keep doing that? Revisited, because there were a lot of problems with the old data, the old source books. So it's great that Mongoose has done this book. I've got some quibbles about layout and the index and that kind of stuff, but overall, the book looks really good. I'm really very pleased with it. Can't wait till the physical copy arrives. If you found this video helpful, please do give it a thumbs up. Please do subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more Traveler Comment, and suggestions for Traveler Comment would be great. If you'd like to help support Ardwulf's Lair and help us do more of this kind of stuff, please do check out the links in the video description to the Ko-Fi, the Patreon, and the merch store. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, happy gaming.